I still remember the exact moment my life split into before and after, even though at the time it looked like nothing more than a normal Tuesday evening in a quiet suburban neighborhood that could have been anywhere outside of Chicago. The kind of place where people wave at each other when they take out the trash, where every lawn is trimmed too perfectly, and where you start to believe that nothing truly bad ever happens because everything looks so controlled on the surface. My dad was the kind of man people respected without even trying. He worked a steady job in logistics, always wore polos or button-downs even when he didn't have to, and had this calm, practiced way of talking that made him sound like he had life figured out. Growing up, I used to think he was unshakable, like nothing could ever knock him off balance. My mom used to joke that he was too put together, and I used to laugh like that was a good thing. I didn't realize until later that being too put together sometimes just means you're very good at hiding things. That Tuesday, I got home from school earlier than usual because our last period got canceled. The house was quiet when I walked in. Too quiet. Normally, there would be the TV murmuring in the background or my mom moving around the kitchen, but that day it felt like the whole place was holding its breath. I dropped my backpack by the stairs and called out for my mom. No answer. I figured she was out running errands, maybe at the grocery store or picking up something for dinner. I didn't think much of it. I went upstairs, changed clothes, and grabbed my phone. That's when I heard it. A vibration. Not mine. It was coming from downstairs. At first I ignored it, but it kept going. Short bursts, then a pause, then again. Like someone's phone was trapped under something. I walked back down slowly, following the sound into the living room. It was coming from the couch. My dad's phone was sitting face down on the cushion. That alone wasn't weird. He left it around the house all the time. But what was weird was the fact that it kept lighting up, buzzing, lighting up again, like whoever was on the other side didn't care if he was busy or not. I stood there for a second, just staring at it. I don't know why I picked it up. I wasn't the kind of person who snooped. At least I didn't think I was. The screen lit up in my hand. A name I didn't recognize. Then another message. Then another. I remember my stomach tightening in a way I didn't understand yet. I didn't open anything at first. I just saw enough on the lock screen to know the messages weren't normal. Not work-related. Not casual. Something about last night. Something about, when can I see you again? Something about, you said she wouldn't be home. I put the phone down so fast it almost slipped out of my hand. For a few seconds, I just stood there, staring at it like it had burned me. Then I heard the garage door. I moved quickly, too quickly, like I was trying to erase what I had just seen from my own memory. My dad walked in a minute later, keys in his hand, looking exactly like he always did. Calm, composed, normal. "Hey," he said, like nothing in the world was wrong. I forced myself to nod. "Hey." He walked past me toward the kitchen, already loosening his watch like he had done it 1,000 times. I remember watching him and thinking how strange it was that someone could look exactly the same while something inside them might be completely different. I kept waiting for him to check his phone. He didn't. That was the first thing that stuck with me. Dinner that night was normal on the surface, but it felt staged in a way I couldn't explain. My mom came home later than usual, tired from work, talking about traffic and a coworker who annoyed her. My dad asked her questions like he always did, nodding at the right times, smiling at the right moments. I watched him more than I ate. Every time his phone lit up in his pocket, I noticed it. He ignored it every time. I started telling myself I was imagining things, that maybe I had misread the messages, that maybe it was some kind of work situation I didn't understand. I wanted that explanation so badly, I almost convinced myself of it. Almost. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the messages in my head. The tone, the familiarity, the way it didn't sound like anything professional. It sounded personal. Too personal. Around 2 a.m., I heard movement downstairs. I got out of bed quietly and stood at the top of the stairs. The kitchen light was on. My dad was there. He wasn't cooking, he wasn't eating. He was just standing there with his phone in his hand, scrolling slowly, like he was reading something that required his full attention. I watched from the shadows, my heart beating louder than I thought possible. Then I saw his face change, just slightly. Not enough for someone across the room to notice, but enough for me to see it from where I stood. A small smile. The kind of smile you don't give to emails or coworkers. Then he typed something back, quickly, like he had done it before, like it was familiar. And then, almost like he sensed something, he looked up. For a split second, I thought he had seen me, but he hadn't. He just stood there in the kitchen, phone still in his hand, and I realized something I wasn't ready to understand yet. My dad had a whole other version of himself that didn't exist in our house. The next morning, everything felt heavier. The sunlight coming through the blinds didn't feel warm like it usually did. It felt harsh, exposing, like it was forcing everything to be visible whether I wanted it or not. I got ready for school in silence. I barely touched breakfast. My mom was already out the door by the time I came downstairs. My dad was still home, sitting at the table with coffee and the newspaper, like nothing had changed in the world overnight.
I kept waiting for him to say something, to act different, to give me some kind of sign that I had misunderstood what I saw. But he didn't. He just asked me about school, about homework, about a test I had mentioned days ago. Normal dad questions. And that's what scared me the most, because nothing about him looked guilty. That afternoon, I made a decision I didn't really think through. I told myself I was just going to confirm what I saw, nothing more, just clarity, just proof that I was wrong so I could move on. But even as I said it in my head, I knew I was lying to myself. I waited until he left for work that day. Then I went upstairs into his room. I had never gone through his things before, not once. It felt wrong immediately, like I was crossing a line I couldn't uncross. But the feeling didn't stop me. I went straight to his dresser, then his nightstand. Nothing at first. Then I found it, a second phone, hidden under a stack of papers in the back drawer. My hands went cold the moment I picked it up. It was locked, but the notifications on the screen were enough. Same name, same pattern, same kind of messages I had seen before. I stood there in his room, holding something that felt like it didn't belong in my reality, and I remember thinking, this wasn't just about him anymore. This was about everything I thought I knew, and I had no idea what I was supposed to do next. That night, I heard his car pull into the driveway like nothing had changed, like he wasn't carrying a Dublin life in his pocket, like our family wasn't already starting to crack in ways nobody else could see yet. I stayed in my room and listened to him walk through the house. Then I heard something I wasn't supposed to hear. He stopped outside my door, and he didn't knock. He just stood there, like he was deciding something, like he already knew I was awake. And that's when I realized whatever was happening wasn't going to stay hidden for long anymore, because I wasn't the only one who knew something was off, and my dad was about to make sure I understood exactly how far this went. The next morning felt different in a way I couldn't explain to anyone without sounding paranoid. Nothing had changed on the surface. The same house, the same quiet neighborhood outside, the same routine noises of a family pretending everything was normal. But I felt like I was living inside a version of my life that had been slightly shifted off its axis, where every small detail now had a second meaning I couldn't stop looking for. I barely slept after what happened at his door. I kept replaying it over and over, trying to figure out if he actually knew I was awake or if I was just imagining the weight of his presence. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized something that made my stomach tighten. My dad wasn't careless. He never had been. If he stopped outside my door like that, it wasn't random. It meant something. At breakfast, he acted the same as always. Calm voice, normal questions, coffee in his hand like it was just another morning. My mom was rushing around, trying to find her keys, complaining about a meeting she was already late for. The house felt too loud in some ways and too quiet in others, like everyone was performing their role without realizing there was an audience now, paying attention differently. I couldn't look at him directly for too long. Every time I did, I felt like I was risking something I didn't understand yet. He eventually left first, like usual, kissed my mom on the cheek, told her to drive safe, told me to have a good day at school, and then he was gone. But the relief I expected didn't come. Instead, about 20 minutes later, I heard my phone buzz. Unknown number. One message. You were in my room. No name, no explanation. Just that. My entire body went cold. For a second, I didn't even breathe. I just stared at the screen, reading it again and again, like maybe the words would rearrange themselves into something harmless. They didn't. I didn't respond right away. I couldn't. My brain was racing through possibilities so fast I couldn't hold on to any of them long enough to make sense. I kept telling myself it could be anything. A coincidence, someone guessing,
A trick? But deep down, I already knew. I waited almost an hour before I finally typed anything back. I don't know what you're talking about. It felt weak even as I sent it. The response came almost immediately. Don't lie to me. That was it. No punctuation, no explanation, just certainty. I sat on my bed staring at my phone like it had turned into something dangerous. My hands were shaking, and I hated that I couldn't stop it. I kept thinking about how someone had to have known I went into that room. There were only a few possibilities, and none of them made sense in a way I wanted to accept. Either my dad saw me, or someone else did, or the phone itself wasn't as private as I thought. The last one made no sense, but I couldn't stop my mind from going there anyway. The rest of the day at school was a blur. I remember sitting in class and not hearing a single word the teacher said. I remember staring at the board like it was in another language. Every vibration from my pocket made my heart jump. Every time I checked my phone, I expected another message, but nothing came. Not until I got home. The house was empty when I walked in. That alone made me uneasy because my mom usually got home around the same time I did. I stood in the kitchen for a minute, listening. The silence felt heavy again, like it was waiting for something to happen. Then I heard the garage, my dad's car. I didn't move. He came inside a minute later, like normal, but this time he didn't go straight to the kitchen or start talking about his day. He just stood near the entrance for a second, looking at me like he was trying to measure something. Then he said my name. Not loudly, not angrily, just controlled. Come here. It wasn't a question.
I followed him into the living room. My mom wasn't home yet, and that made everything feel more exposed, like there was no buffer between us anymore. He sat down on the couch. I stayed standing at first, but he gestured for me to sit across from him. I didn't want to, but I did. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he leaned forward slightly, resting his elbows on his knees, and looked at me in a way I had never seen before. Not angry, not soft either. Something in between, something carefully managed. I don't know what you think you saw, he said. My throat tightened instantly. There it was. Not denial, not confusion, just control. I didn't see anything, I said, but even to me it sounded hollow. He nodded slowly, like he was accepting that answer, but not believing it. Then he pulled out his phone. My chest tightened. He didn't show it to me right away. He just held it in his hand and looked at it for a second, like he was deciding something. Then he said, "You went into my room." It wasn't a question. My silence answered for me. He exhaled through his nose and leaned back slightly. For the first time, I saw something closer to frustration slip through the surface, but it wasn't explosive. It was restrained, contained, like everything else about him. "You don't understand what you're getting into," he said. That sentence hit harder than I expected, because it wasn't defensive. It sounded like warning, or maybe instruction. "I didn't take anything," I said quickly, even though that wasn't really the point. "I know," he replied immediately. That confused me more than anything else so far. If he knew, then why did it matter? He finally unlocked his phone and placed it face down on the table between us. "I need you to listen to me," he said. Something about the way he said it made my stomach twist. This wasn't the same tone he used when giving advice. This wasn't parenting. This was something else entirely. "You saw messages," he continued. My silence confirmed it again. He nodded once, like that was all he needed. Then he said something I wasn't ready for. "Those messages are not what you think they are." I almost laughed, but nothing came out. Because even though my mind was screaming that he was lying, another part of me was stuck on something else. The certainty in his voice. Not nervous, not scrambling, not caught. Controlled. He leaned forward again. "This is not about your mom," he said quietly. That was the first crack in my confusion, because that wasn't what I had said. I hadn't mentioned my mom, not once, which meant he was already assuming what I was thinking, or he already knew. My heart started pounding harder. "Then what is it about?" I asked. He studied me for a long second, like he was deciding how much truth I could handle, or how much he wanted to give. Then he said, "You need to forget what you saw." It wasn't just a request. It was final. My hands clenched without me realizing it. "You can't just tell me to forget it," I said. His expression didn't change much, but something in his eyes hardened slightly. "I'm not telling you, I'm asking you," he corrected. The difference mattered to him, I could tell, but not to me, because asking still meant control. It still meant he expected compliance. And for the first time, I realized this wasn't going to be something I could just walk away from. Not because of what I saw,
but because of what he was willing to do to keep me from talking about it. Before I could respond, the front door opened. My mom's voice came in from the hallway, calling out that she was home. The moment broke instantly. My dad stood up like nothing had happened, like we had just been talking about school or dinner plans. He picked up his phone, slipped it into his pocket, and walked toward the kitchen to greet her. And I just sat there, still processing the fact that whatever this was, it wasn't over. It had just changed shape, and I was already trapped inside it more than I wanted to admit. After my mom came home that night, everything shifted into a kind of forced normal that felt almost more uncomfortable than the tension itself. My dad acted like nothing had happened between us in the living room. He was back in his role instantly, asking my mom about her day, helping her carry a grocery bag she didn't really need help with, making small comments about dinner like we were just another ordinary family winding down an ordinary evening. But I couldn't unsee what had just happened. The way he looked at me when he said, "Forget what you saw." The way he didn't deny anything in a real way, just redirected it. The way he already knew I had been in his room before I even said it out loud. That wasn't normal fear or embarrassment. That was control. And worse, it felt practiced. That night I stayed in my room longer than usual, just listening to the house settle. My mom eventually went to bed first, exhausted from work. My dad stayed downstairs for a while, watching TV low enough that I couldn't hear dialogue, just the murmur of sound filling space so the house didn't feel empty. I kept checking my phone without meaning to. Nothing from the unknown number. Nothing from anyone. Just silence, which somehow made it worse, because silence didn't feel like peace anymore. It felt like waiting. Around midnight, I heard footsteps again. Not my mom this time. Slower, deliberate. My door didn't open, but I knew he was in the hallway. I could feel it the same way you feel pressure before a storm even hits. Then my phone buzzed. Not a message, a call. Unknown number again. My heart jumped so hard I almost dropped it. I didn't answer right away. I stared at it vibrating in my hand like it was something dangerous I shouldn't touch. The call stopped after a few seconds. Then immediately, a message came through. Answer when I call. No explanation, just instruction. Before I could even process it, it rang again. This time I answered.
I didn't say anything at first. On the other end, there was silence for a beat too long. Then my dad's voice came through, low, controlled, like he was making sure no one else in the house could hear him, even though he was probably 10 feet away from my door. "Lock your door," he said. I did it without thinking. "Good," he continued. "Now listen to me carefully." I sat down on my bed, my grip tightening on the phone. "This is not something you repeat," he said. "Not to your mom, not to anyone." My mouth went dry. "What is going on?" A pause. Not confusion, calculation. "You saw messages that were not meant for you," he said, "and you went looking where you shouldn't have." My chest tightened again, anger and fear mixing in a way I didn't know how to separate. "You were hiding a second phone," I said. "That's not me going where I shouldn't." "Stop," he cut in, sharper than before. That one word shut me up instantly. There was a silence on the line again, but this time it felt heavier. When he spoke again, his voice was calmer. "You're going to make this worse than it has to be," he said. I let out a short laugh, but it came out shaky. "Worse than what? You're the one cheating on Mom." The word hung there between us like a dropped glass. Cheating. I didn't even know I was going to say it until it came out. There was no immediate response. For the first time, I heard something crack in his tone. Not guilt, not shame, annoyance. "Don't use that word," he said. That alone made my stomach drop, because it wasn't denial, it was correction, like the label was the problem, not the action. "You don't understand what you're seeing," he repeated, but this time it sounded less like warning and more like exhaustion. I tightened my grip on the phone. "Then explain it." Another pause, longer this time. I could hear faint sound on his end, like he was walking somewhere in the house. A floorboard creaked, a door clicked softly. He wasn't standing still. Finally, he said, "You need to stop digging." That wasn't an answer, it was avoidance, and it confirmed everything my instincts had been screaming. "This is bigger than you think," he added. That line hit differently, because it wasn't about the affair anymore. It sounded like something layered underneath it. "Bigger how?" I asked. He didn't answer directly. Instead, he said, "Tomorrow after school, you're coming with me." My stomach dropped. "Where?" "You'll see." I sat up straighter. "I'm not going anywhere with you if you're not telling me what this is." His voice hardened slightly again. "You don't have a choice." That silence after he said it felt different from all the others. It wasn't tense, it was final. Then he added something quieter. "And I need you to understand something. If your mom finds out the way you're about to find out, it will destroy her in a way you can't undo. That was the first time he brought her into it like that, not as someone he was betraying.
But as someone fragile in a situation he was managing, it twisted something in my chest. "You don't get to protect her from this," I said, my voice rising before I could stop it. "I am protecting her," he said immediately. That sentence didn't make sense to me, not yet. But the way he said it didn't sound like a lie either. It sounded like belief. Then, just as suddenly as it started, the call ended. No goodbye, just silence again. I sat there staring at my phone like it might explain itself if I waited long enough, but it didn't. The next day at school was worse than the day before. I couldn't focus on anything. Every time I saw a phone screen light up in class, I thought it was him again. I kept replaying his voice saying, "You don't have a choice." By the time afternoon came, I was already exhausted. When I got home, his car was already gone, but there was a note on the kitchen counter. "Be ready at 5:30. That was it. No explanation, no destination, just instruction again. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I was choosing anything anymore. I felt like I was being pulled into something that had been in motion long before I ever noticed it. At 5:30 sharp, he pulled into the driveway. I got in the car without speaking. He didn't look at me right away, just pulled out of the neighborhood like it was a normal drive, like nothing had changed between us, like we weren't both carrying something heavy that we refused to name out loud. For almost 10 minutes, neither of us spoke. The city started to appear around us more as we left the quiet suburbs. Traffic, storefronts, people walking sidewalks, life happening like normal in every direction except inside that car. Finally, I asked, "Where are we going?" He kept his eyes on the road. "Somewhere you can see what you think you already know." That answer made my stomach tighten again. We ended up in a parking lot outside a small diner near the edge of a commercial strip. Nothing fancy, the kind of place people go when they don't want to be seen going anywhere else. He parked farther back, not near the entrance. That alone told me this wasn't accidental. "Stay here," he said. "I'm not staying in the car like a kid," I snapped immediately. He finally looked at me then, and for the first time, I saw something closer to urgency in his expression. "This is not about control," he said quietly. "Just don't move until I tell you." Then he got out and walked toward the diner. I watched him go inside. My pulse was loud in my ears. I didn't stay. I waited maybe 30 seconds before I opened my door and followed. Inside, the diner was dim, booths half filled, the smell of coffee and fried food mixing in a way that felt too normal for what I was feeling. Then I saw him, my dad, sitting in a booth near the back, and across from him was someone I didn't recognize at first. A woman, not my mom. They were talking quietly, leaning in slightly, not in a dramatic way, not like in movies, but familiar, in a way that made my stomach drop instantly. And then I saw the way she looked at him, like she knew him, like this wasn't new. My chest tightened so hard it felt like I couldn't breathe. I stepped back slightly, trying not to be seen, my mind scrambling to fit what I was seeing into what I thought I already knew. But before I could even process it fully, my dad turned his head slightly, and his eyes locked onto mine. He saw me, and instead of looking surprised, he just closed his eyes for a second, like he had expected this moment all along. Then he stood up and started walking toward me. I watched him stand up from that booth like the air itself had shifted around him. For a second, everything in the diner felt frozen. Conversations blurred into background noise, plates clinked, someone laughed near the counter, but all I could see was my dad walking toward me, like I wasn't supposed to be there at all, like I had stepped into a scene that was already in motion long before I arrived. My feet didn't move. I think part of me was still trying to convince myself I was wrong about what I saw, that maybe this wasn't what it looked like, that maybe there was another explanation my brain just hadn't caught up to yet. But then I saw the woman stand too, and the way she didn't look surprised. That was what broke the illusion completely. My dad stopped a few feet away from me, close enough that I could see the smallest details I hadn't noticed in the car or at home. The slight tension in his jaw, the way his hand stayed half clenched off his side like he was holding something in. "You weren't supposed to follow me," he said quietly. It wasn't anger. It was something heavier than that. Behind him, the woman stayed at the booth. She didn't come closer, but she didn't leave either. Just watched, measuring the situation the same way he was. "I saw you," I said, my voice coming out sharper than I intended. Again, with her. His eyes closed for a second, like he was absorbing the impact of that sentence instead of reacting to it. Then he nodded once, almost like he accepted it. "Yeah," he said. Just that. No denial, no excuse. That hit me harder than anything else so far, because part of me had been bracing for him to fight it, to lie, to twist it.
But he didn't. He just confirmed it like it was already decided. My throat felt tight. So that's it. That's what this is. You've been, what, lying to Mom? Sneaking around like this? His eyes flicked briefly toward the booth behind him, then back to me. It's not simple, he said. I almost laughed, but it came out as a breath instead. It looks pretty simple from where I'm standing. He stepped slightly closer, lowering his voice even more. You don't understand what you walked into, he repeated. But this time it didn't sound like a warning. It sounded tired, like he'd said it too many times already.
I shook my head. Stop saying that like it explains anything. For a moment, he didn't respond. The woman finally moved closer, stopping just behind him, but still giving space. She looked at me directly now. Not hostile, not apologetic either, just present. And that made everything worse in a different way. Because if this was just a secret fling, she wouldn't be standing there like she belonged in this conversation. My dad exhaled slowly and ran a hand through his hair. I wasn't trying to hide this from you like that, he said. My chest tightened. You have a second phone. You've been getting messages at night. You told me to forget what I saw. What part of that is not hiding it? He flinched slightly at that. Just a small reaction, but enough for me to notice. Then he looked at the woman briefly, like checking something without words. I needed you to see enough to stop digging, he said. That makes no sense, I shot back immediately. It does if you know what's actually happening, he said. Something in his tone changed then, not softer, but more direct, like he was deciding that keeping things vague wasn't working anymore. He gestured slightly toward the booth. This is Laura, he said. The woman gave a small nod, but didn't interrupt. She's not what you think, he added. I stared at him. Then what is she? Another pause, long enough that I could feel my own anger building just to fill the silence. Finally, he said, she's helping me get out. That didn't clear anything up. It only made it worse. Get out of what? I asked. His jaw tightened again. Out of this, he said, like that should be obvious. I felt my hands clench without realizing it. You're talking in circles. He nodded once, like he agreed. Then he looked past me toward the exit briefly, scanning the diner like he was checking for something. And when he spoke again, his voice dropped even lower. I wasn't honest with your mom, he said. My stomach sank slightly, but I stayed still. That part is true, he continued. But it's not just about seeing someone. It's not just an affair the way you're thinking of it. I felt my anger spike again. So what is it then? Because it sure looks like one. He didn't deny that part either. Instead, he said something that made the entire room feel quieter around me. I was leaving, he said. That landed differently. Not cheating as a moment, not a mistake, a direction. I blinked, trying to process it. Leaving as in divorcing her? He nodded once. The confirmation didn't feel like relief. It felt like something collapsing. You were just going to walk away? I said, my voice rising slightly despite myself. That's not what I wanted, he said quickly, then corrected himself. It's not that simple. The woman, Laura, finally spoke for the first time. Her voice was calm, controlled, like she had been waiting for the right moment. He didn't tell you because he didn't want you in the middle of it, she said. I turned to her instantly. I already am in the middle of it. She didn't argue that. Instead, she nodded slightly, like she accepted that truth. My dad looked at me again, and something in his expression shifted in a way I hadn't seen before. Not control, not calculation, pressure, like he was carrying something that had been weighing him down for a long time. I wasn't meeting her behind your mom's back for what you think, he said. My voice came out sharper than I intended. Then why were you meeting her? He hesitated, then said, because I needed someone to help me separate everything without destroying your mother in the process. That sentence didn't land cleanly in my head. It tangled. You're not making sense, I said. Laura stepped slightly forward this time. He's been trying to do this quietly, she said. Paperwork, timing, housing, finances. If this explodes the wrong way, it won't just be emotional. It'll be everything at once. I stared at her, then back at him. And for the first time since this started, I didn't know which part of what I was hearing was supposed to be the shocking one, because none of it explained the second phone. None of it explained the messages I saw. None of it explained don't lie to me. I pointed slightly toward him. Then what about all of that? I said. The messages, the way you reacted when I was in your room, the call last night. You told me I don't have a choice. That doesn't sound like divorce paperwork. His expression tightened again. And this time he looked away for a second, not from guilt, from frustration, because you weren't just seeing that part, he said quietly. My stomach dropped slightly again. There's someone else involved, he added. That sentence changed the temperature of everything. I looked at him, searching his face for exaggeration, for manipulation, for anything that made this feel less real. But he didn't look like he was performing anymore.
He looked like someone who had been cornered. Laura glanced around the diner again. "We shouldn't be having this here," she said quietly. My dad nodded once, then looked back at me. "I told you not to dig because you were close to seeing something you weren't ready for," he said. My voice dropped. "Then show me." For a moment, I thought he was going to refuse again, but instead he reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. Not the second one, the one I recognized. He unlocked it, hesitated for half a second, then turned the screen toward me. There were messages, not romantic, not normal, warnings, names I didn't recognize, short phrases, references that didn't make immediate sense but carried a tone that wasn't casual at all. And at the top of one thread, a message that simply read, "We know she doesn't know yet." My chest tightened instantly. My dad's voice was quieter now. "This is what I've been trying to manage," he said. I looked up at him slowly.
And for the first time, the betrayal didn't feel like it was just about another woman. It felt like I was standing in the middle of something I had never been told the rules to, something bigger than I had been allowed to understand. And my dad, the man I thought I knew completely, was looking at me like he had run out of time to explain it the safe way.